Andy Baehr is here, head of product at CoinDesk Indices. Thank you for being here. You know, it's risk on, risk off. There are people who think a store of value. They don't necessarily want gold. They want Bitcoin. But Bitcoin has been out of favor, as you know, of late. This month down 17%. What's going on, Andy?
You'd think that it would be a great time for the digital asset market right now. You've had the SEC and other regulators drop a lot of lawsuits against crypto companies, which was expected but is happening. You saw that the CME is going to launch futures on Solana. That news came out. That'll start pending regulatory approval on March 17th. You've seen that BlackRock has added IBIT to allocations for alternative model portfolios. And you have the current regulatory framework continuing to improve as we've expected since before the election. Yet, the market is in a risk-off sentiment right now. And right now, digital assets, whereas we still believe that they have their own properties, Bitcoin is a store of value and others as growth of future of finance. Right now, it's a time where people crave cash and they're moving in that direction.
Look, I mean, last January, we had the approval of the ETFs of Bitcoin, followed by the approval of the Ethereum ETFs.
Yes.
And now you're talking about Solana futures. I mean, this is exciting. It shows, and the idea was that this administration, the Trump administration, was going to be crypto-friendly, crypto czars. They wanted to get ahead of the other countries. Do you still feel that's true?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that example of last year, because between January and March, let's say 13th of last year, Bitcoin screamed towards a new record high. At the time, it was trying to break over 70,000. It got to 73,000. And then we experienced 2 quarters of just waiting, painful sideways waiting, where we dipped down into the low 50s, and then the rally came before the election and into the election. So crypto markets have these periods where sentiment's very strong, price action's very strong. It does force us to be patient at times. We think that given the volatility profile and the youth of the digital asset class, this kind of volatility is not to be expected. Those who want to accumulate are certainly accumulating now. Those who are afraid of short-term losses might be sitting on the sidelines.
You know, there was, in fact, I saw fueled by record outflows from U.S. spot Bitcoin this week, so it did bring some sharp declines.
Yes.
And that just, you know, we had broader market pessimism.
Yep.
To, you know, the overall crypto market, though. Tell me, is it still a good play? Do people still believe in it? Don't give up?
We just spent 2 weeks out in Asia for the first Consensus Hong Kong event, and then touring through Hong Kong and Singapore, talking to all the trading firms. The market is as positive as it's been, and certainly the regulatory mood and the availability of capital in the United States certainly makes the rest of the world feel like it's a great place to be. We just have to we have to just be prepared for these periods where risk-off sentiment has things pull back a little bit. On those ETF outflows, we have to remember that some of those ETFs are in investor and trader portfolios. Some of those ETFs are being used in arbitrage trades against futures, because sometimes the futures trade out of line with where spot's trading, and that presents an opportunity. So some of those outflows are that the arb trades aren't working right now. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are losing faith in the long-term prospects for Bitcoin.
Right. I mean, there was a lot of talk about gold and whether or not the gold bars themselves and the paper, right? You buy gold, it's on paper. Where's the real gold and how do you get it? It takes 4-6 weeks to get it, and that other countries are buying it. And there was a whole thing on that this week. I had with several guests, and gold, in fact, had its worst week this week. Then I thought maybe Bitcoin would have maybe benefited from sort of the uncertainty of where's the gold.
I think, you know, Bitcoin is a young 16-year-old asset.
Right.
It has demonstrated time and time again through its security and its adoption rate that as a store of value, given its finite supply, it offers an interesting alternative to gold that's more portable, more stateless, and you're certainly not lugging around gold bars everywhere. The recent volatility really shouldn't change that narrative too much. We're thinking about years of ownership. Bitcoin's been among the greatest performing assets 8 out of the last 10 years. So what's happened in the last couple of weeks, some of this feels actually kind of a healthy pullback after the exuberance we saw in November and early December. We still, our thesis and our narrative hasn't changed that much, not only for Bitcoin, but for the CoinDesk 20 index, which measures 20 top crypto assets. each of which can benefit from growth. Yeah.
Bitcoin 100,000, Bitcoin 150,000. Still possibilities on the table for 2025?
Blink and you'll miss it. We don't do specific price targets, but certainly when you look at the volatility profile of Bitcoin, those kind of numbers certainly aren't statistically unlikely.
Look, and at the same time, when this is the biggest drop we've seen since the FTX debacle, or whatever
Correct.
you want to call it, crisis. But there were times that the Nasdaq was selling off, things were selling off, and Bitcoin ended up being less volatile.
That's right.
Held.
Absolutely. 1 week ago today, or one of the larger offshore crypto exchanges, Bybit, was hacked and was robbed of almost $1.5 billion. It was sufficiently reserved, and the community came to ensure that it was able to continue working. Bitcoin didn't break. It had been trading in a very tight $2,000 range for 2 weeks, and that event didn't even break that. It was really the general market risk-off sentiment that really caused the crack below 95, then below 90, then below 80. So, look.
And most of that was recovered, I think. I had read that about over 75% of that had been recovered. I don't know.
Recovery rates are. It was a pretty nasty. Apparently, the FBI came out today and identified that this was North Korean sponsors.
Right?
North Korea. Right.
Okay.
And so that's crime. That's not an FTX problem of fraud.
And this is what makes crypto investors nervous, particularly newer ones. But the ETFs brought some confidence to folks because they felt like now it's more proved, and you talked about BlackRock, and you're getting the big banks involved and all that. What are some of the best ways to invest in different types of Bitcoin? If you were going to say like 2 or 3 ideas, what would you tell somebody? Yeah,
certainly the number one thing we always say is think about Bitcoin differently from all other digital assets because it has unique properties, right? It's the oldest blockchain. It is definitionally a store of value. It has a finite supply. Think of it as one thing. Outside of that, you want to think about future uses of blockchain technology. You want to think about layer 1 protocols like Ethereum and Solana. You want to think about decentralized finance, things like Uniswap and Aave. You want to think about service providers like Chainlink and Filecoin. Now, most people will be thinking...
All of those are good ideas?
All of those...
I mean, could you have all of those?
We put them all in an index because we don't think people are going to want to choose.
What's the index?
The CoinDesk 20. And really...
what's the symbol on that?
CD20. And there are... Actually, we just announced ETPs in Europe. We will be bringing investment products to the United States on this index. Very soon, hopefully. But for now, we have private funds, and there are separately managed account ways to access it. But we really feel like passive indexing for many people is going to be the right way to proceed. So
CD20, it's not available. It doesn't come up just like that. I mean, it's going to be available.
Correct.
And I know you're jet lagged, and I couldn't be more appreciative that you're here. But one more time, what is packed? Some of the things that are packed into the CD20 that we will be able to have access to. What's in there again?
I think that you want to think about sectors and segments. You want to think about smart contract platform blockchains. That's what Ethereum does. That's what Solana does. They support other things like stable coins, like meme coins, like NFTs. Those are important to have. Then you want to think about decentralized finance, which is everything, all things markets inside software rather than with people. Uniswap and Aave are 2 of the biggest names there. You want to think about service providers that take on-chain information or off-chain information and bring it into the DeFi world. Chainlink is a good example of that kind of name. We're not making investment recommendations into these things, but these are segments or sectors worth investigating and worth learning about. These are things that will grow as the future of finance grows. We think most people will be best served by considering index-based investments rather than picking individual tokens. Last year, the top performers in our index were Ripple and Stellar, and really few people had those on their bingo cards at the beginning of the year, so you never know which names are going to catch fire. Probably best to buy the whole market and experience the growth in the whole asset class.
Right, and that's why people like ETFs or indexes, because they get the basket and they get the exposure across the board.
Exactly right.
Andy Baehr, great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to U.S. soil. That's always a good feeling when you get back to the USA.
Sure is.
Andy Baehr, Head of Product at CoinDesk.